everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Cheeky Natives. Obviously, you know it's myself, MelaninMagic and Alma. And yes, Alma?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another fire episode of The Cheeky Natives. Today we have some very, very special guests. I could introduce them, but we have a poet in the house, so I'm sure he'll do the introducing.
I'm a spy. I mean, what does that mean? Like, am I supposed to do a poem, or am I supposed to say, on my left, coming in at 72 kilograms?
Do the things. Do
all
the things.
The way. We say 21 poem salute for the writers who die on stage because they think their egos are word-proof. Your technique is not unique. Your BlackBerry tweet is not a haiku. Your Facebook status is not a poem. And your blog is not a novel. Nothing epic. You need to read more. Let wisdom unveil your ignorance, and maybe you can see more when be more informed before you throw careless speech at a time when men and women die for the words they speak. We say salute. My name's Afurakan. I'm a poet. CEO of WordnSound, Love Literature Company. General Crazy Guy. What's good?
What's good?
So I have no poems because actually he performs all the poems I write.
Drop a design.
I'm gonna drop a design. You're silly.
Or
anyway,
a treat. Come on.
Anyway,
All right.
My name is Qhakaza Mthembo, and I am the managing director of the WordnSound Live Literature Company.
Okay, guys, so we need to tell you about WordnSound and how incredibly amazing WordnSound is, and how we got involved with WordnSound. So we've known about WordnSound because they've been running for like 7 years now. And each year, since their first year, they've been having like WordnSound festivals, like an international festival, where they've brought Wasan to stage, they've brought Alicia Harris to stage.
Joshua Bennett, doing the things.
You know, so it's been an incredibly amazing time. And each year they run a competition to get people all access tickets, right? And last year, Alma and I were the ones who won the all access pass.
Pause. This is the beginning of a love story. It goes a little something like this.
So we tweeted, guys, we tweeted a lot that weekend. We tweeted a lot. Like,
I should have been studying and I was tweeting, guys.
We tweeted a lot, and we won all access tickets to the 6th festival, WordnSound International Festival, where we got to spend time with the likes of Alicia Harris, Pakama, Sipokazi, Asbu, and even the WordnSound team. We were like an integral part of them. Like, we went, we were backstage. It was incredible.
It was amazing.
What do you want to say about us, y'all?
I would like to first say, so I run all the digital, right? And that has turned out to be one of our like most strategic moves ever, to make everything so digital, because that's why we've been able to grow at the rate that we have. That's how we've been able to land all the international projects, and even that international festival, is really largely due to what people, if you go on WordnSound right now to go and see what there is, you get a good sense of what we're doing. But no one has ever taken that competition as seriously as you guys did. Oh my gosh, we were out there just like, wow, you guys are doing better than like we are at promoting our own festival, So I guess it was part of that. It was like tapping into, there's all of this energy around WordnSound, all of these people who really make WordnSound what it is. So how do we tap into that? Tap into all of your different markets as well in spreading the word. And you guys went over and above the call.
At some stage,
duty.
I was thinking, shame, they're really poor. They really want these tickets. They're spending their last 5 rand on data.
Tweeting on posters,
until you check profiles, you're like, oh, it's a doctor and a lawyer. No, they can buy it. Actually, they can buy all of us tickets. Actually.
But I think you guys brought in an energy backstage that we hadn't had. So festival is tough. Festival is tough. Backstage is even tougher. There's like, it's really, really tough. And it was our first year where we were running a week-long festival. By the time we've got, those last 2 nights, we're at like our last little bit of this is what I'm giving. And the energy that you guys brought to the backstage was just like, oh, okay, wait, maybe we can do this. We're like in the middle of a festival. There's people who are genuinely excited. Every time I walked past you, there was a new selfie, there was a new video, there was a new something that was happening, and I think that really just added to the energy. It also added to our online coverage, of what we do. So we're really great with tweeting, but we can't be everywhere at the same time, So I think just having the two of you, and that also that backstage access, I think has only been as public as this because of you guys, because of what you were doing. But I think it added something new, like to that. And like you said, the beginning of a love affair, because we've just been like, hey, you can be all access pass winners to everything where it's related. Just come. At the last show, you were even at the kitchen out there helping Tinta with the Boerewors roll goals, you know. So yeah, I think it's just shown us that you guys are really, really just like amazing people. Your love for literature is unparalleled. Your passion for what we do for Black excellence has really just kept us really going. And there's people who just believe in us so much. It's kind of intimidating, but it's so great.
I think also what makes Word and Sound stick out, right, is the idea that you have these brown people in what is traditionally a very, very lily white industry, you know. So here are Black people bringing these poets that we've only, Alicia Harris, everybody knows Alicia Harris from That Girl. And here's Alicia Harris sitting, you know, at the Market Theatre and just waxing lyrical in an audience full of Black people. And it debunks all these myths, which is a great thing that the Qhakaza are trying to do, right? Because there's all these myths about Black people and reading, and that we don't like to read, we don't like literature. Do you know what I mean? That we are far removed from that, and it's always great to, even though we're not in the space of the arts, you know, as future patrons of the arts, when we become the next Black Bill Gates, but it's that accessibility, and that brings me to my next question: as why did you guys start Word and Sound? I mean, live, it's been going for 7 years, so it's a long-standing, you know. It's been for a while. Why did you guys start Word and Sound?
Sure. I think to answer your previous question, we only don't read literature that's not for us.
Yes.
Is what I mean. And throughout the longest time, the literature that's been out there is literature that's not for us. That might be about us, but it's not for us, it's not by us, and it's being shoved down our throats. And then they say we don't want to read. I don't want to read propaganda. It's fine. Is what I mean. So now there's a new way where you see that we're actually reading, but what are we reading? Stuff that actually speaks back to us. So that culture has always been there. It's just that, you know, the powers that be, the white publishing industry, they've got the biggest machinery, the biggest voice, the biggest tools. So they've been shoving all of that useless stuff, or at least irrelevant stuff, down our throats. But that tide is changing. And I think, from the departure point, that's part of the reason why we started Word and Sound. You know, we grew up in Newtown during the days of Horror Cafe, Shivava Cafe. You know, proper. I mean, that was my boot camp. You know, Newtown was my boot camp. That's where I met pretty much everybody, and everybody was still trying to make it in Joburg. Like, this is literally from a King Tar to a Double HP to a Kabomu to a Kojo to a Lebo Mashile, Dumi Mulikane. Mek Manaka, you know, like this. I think for me, that was such a beautiful era. When I was 21, becoming a poet, writing, performing, getting kicked off stage, sleeping on the street, just loving Newtown, just showing up for the sake of showing up, because that's what Newtown was about. You didn't need a reason; you just showed up, and there was something happening there, you know. And when that died prior to the World Cup in 2010. It left a void, and a clear void. You know, there weren't any live music spaces, definitely no open mic spaces. Liquid Tongue, was still running, but they were hanging on with Osmic before he eventually moved out of Newtown as well. You know, I think that was pretty much the last, prior to us, the last young person to move out of Newtown. I'm arts programmer, you know. So we then started Word and Sound to start filling that void, to say, right, we grew up in a fantastic era where everything was happening in Newtown. Where's that gone to? So can we start a platform that can get people excited about open mics, about writing, about performing, and see where it goes, you know? But, you know, we never had a big plan from the beginning of where this machine is going to go. I think the need and the intention was honest from the beginning. You know, it was about, we need to create a space for young people to be able to express themselves, the same kind of space that was given to us when we grew up in Newtown. How do we then make sure that legacy carries on? And I think we were just at the right place at the right time. Young people needed a platform, a credible platform. Young people had a lot of things to say. The spaces did not exist, and everybody just latched onto Word and Sound.
And I think, thank you, you know, to the Word and Sound team for starting Word and Sound. I mean, for me, I think Word and Sound has brought so much healing, and even has given so much potential to young people out here. Like, every single event that I have gone to that Word and Sound has had has been filled to capacity by Black people, just being so excited and so happy to be in a space where the people on stage are telling their stories. They're telling them in the way that they want to be told, you know. And it's so thank you to Word and Sound for doing this amazing work, because I think it's important work that Word and Sound does. I remember the first time I met you, Afura. we were at the Orbit, and it was Nolwazi, Koleka, Putuma, and you. You were performing with Maisha Jenkins, one of her out-and-out poetry sessions. And it was interesting because like we spoke in the bathroom and then we took it out because I was like, oh my gosh, this man understands toxic masculinity, so I have to speak to him. And I feel like following your work, like there has been quite a shift in the work that you've been doing, right? So right now, and I remember the first time you said, you're like, well, black man, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you started.
And all the women in the audience went, amen.
This was before men are trash.
This is before men are trash, yeah. So, do you want to like speak about that shift as Afura, the artist?
I think, there's a haunting question that somebody asked me during those Newtown Horror Cafe days, you know, where he heard me on stage and he said to me, what is your writing about? What is the purpose of your writing? And he made an example of Bob Marley. He says, you look at Bob Marley, you listen to his work, you can tell what his agenda is. You know, what is your agenda? And I was upset. I mean, I was 20. I was like, I write because I can write. I want to write. I want to, you know what I mean? I didn't get the depth of the question.
Yeah.
I think, and part of it was because I had not written enough yet.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about writing and going through the exploration of writing and self-exploration to understand what is important to you as a writer, which themes keep reoccurring in your writing, you know. I think my work has always been urgent and always sort of tries to be reflective of what's going on. But it was always just random. Like, I'm not a disciplined writer. I don't sit and write because I'm a writer, I must write. I wait for cycles to write. And I get that from Waliso Rote, who says, you know, the writer doesn't always need to write. Sometimes you sit back and you absorb what is going on. And then in your writing, then you sum up the different voices, the different opinions, the different points of views, you know, you as a writer, then to sum those up and create sort of like a radical position. So for me, it was about writing for the first 10 years of my life. All of that rubbish, if you want to call it that, for me then to come out to your point, to say, right, what is actually important? What is urgent to me? And I'm a black man. And the black man is in crisis.
Yeah.
That cannot be denied. The black man is in super crisis. And for me, my work needs to start at home. It needs to start with dealing with black men. And the urgency of that, of dealing with black men, I think it's something that none of us maybe sort of understand fully yet. Maybe until we hit some point of no return, which I'm hoping we don't, you know. So I think my work in the last 2-3 years has looked at black men, but also across the spectrum.
Yeah.
So black men being exploited, black men as tools, black men as cheap labor, you know, from the Marikana story to black men working as security guards, you know, and trying to appreciate the beauty of the black man even within that, you know, the black man who struggles, who's a laborer, but at the same time is a father, he raises a child, he's an uncle, he's a brother, and so forth, right across to, you know, the black man, the monster, you know, black man who only sees ass on a black woman, you know, black man who rapes, black men in positions of power, as a politician, as captains of industry, as businessmen, as so-called heads of households, you know, so that power position with the black man. And for me, it's important because I'm exploring as I write. So there isn't a superposition I'm writing from to say I am knowledgeable, so I'm gonna, you know, filter down this knowledge, but instead it's about me exploring being a black man in this time and age and trying to reflect things that we need to change about ourselves and things that we need to celebrate about ourselves.
So, I mean, WordnSound is 7, and what do you think have been some of the biggest lessons that you guys have learned, you know, in the whole having a live literature company? What if you could go back to your younger selves at the beginning of this journey, what would you have done differently?
Cut off a lot of people.
Okay, so on that, I guess the thing is that there's WordnSound is hard. It's really, really difficult to do what we do. If you are the front runner or like trying to do anything new in an industry, trying to shake up an industry that exists and that has like roots that are like decades deep, you know, and you're here, young black kids with absolutely no capital, like you've got no business even thinking that you
about
do,
business,
you know, like guys, you're like playing out of your league, you know. I think that it's really difficult to find people who are like-minded enough and like outside of the moment, because I mean we'll speak and we'll be like, oh, we're fired up, let's do this, And then when the reality of life hits, it's just like, okay, maybe I'm not as fired up about that idea, you know. So I think it's been difficult over the years, you know, to find people who are as dedicated, especially when things get difficult, you know, to keep pushing, to keep believing in something that it isn't tangible. It isn't. We also don't exactly know what it is we're believing in. Like, it's not as if I can say this is a 10-step plan to how we're going to get to where we're going. I have no idea where we're going, you know. And I think also what Thabiso was saying was that the WordnSound that we started is not the WordnSound that exists now. The beast that exists now is something that we're like each day realizing that, oh, okay, we're actually building something really huge here. Okay, cool, you know. So I think commitment is a huge thing that doesn't come as easily to everyone. And I think as well, just our lives happen differently to us, you know. There's different realities that hit that then force you to, this art thing is still like that side hustle that you have, you know. So that's been that. I think also just another lesson is that we can't do it alone. So you need a team. And as much as trying to find a team is difficult, you need a team. And especially with poetry being where it is right now, there isn't any room for you to sort of like work on your own or as in silos or whatnot, because we're needing to build a base that's much bigger than ourselves, you know. What would we do differently? Sure, I think maybe for my own sanity's sake, I might be a tad less ambitious with my dreams, because we've got some pretty big dreams, you know. But I think in as much as there have been many faults in what we've done, I wouldn't do it differently, because each and every stumble, each and every mistake that we've made, you know, have taught us some really important things and have gotten us to where we are right now. So if we didn't have those big dreams, if our first festival was just, we overthought it. Like we were just like, we're gonna have 1,000 people come, let's get a huge ass venue, and we had like 50 people come through or whatnot, you know. But if we did not have,
and lost a lot of money that belonged to a beautiful gentleman that we'll talk about later.
Didn't have those grand dreams, you know, WordnSound wouldn't be where it is right now, you know. So our next festival was just a little better thought out type thing, where we catered for about 300 people. We had 250 people show up. It's like, okay, cool. So we're definitely growing from the 50 who came to the last one. It's 250 now, but we needed those big dreams, you know. And that it's going to be, I think also that it's going to be difficult, and it's forced us to think really like innovatively about what we do and how we do this arts thing, you know. So we don't have the money. We're not about to have the money either, you know. So it's forced us to be very strategic about partnerships, you know, to start looking at companies in a different way. But I think another thing as well we could have done earlier from the beginning was to get, let's say, funding from the beginning, but then we wouldn't be sitting 7 years in to say that we completely own what we have, you know. So as big as it is, it would have been something that be like, oh no, we actually got bought out, we actually work for someone who owns WordnSound, and that would have been really sad, you know. So I think that it's a long game, like a long haul, you know, where you can't expect to get, I mean, we keep saying that we're not going to benefit from WordnSound, you know. Our kids and the poets who are on stage right now, their kids and the grandkids, they're the ones who are really going to be able to like be like, yo, because WordnSound exists, this is where I am. We're not going to see that in our lifetime, and it's perfectly okay, you know.
And I think for me, what has been very important is watching WordnSound grow, right? So, I mean, exciting news. Brave New Voices Africa. Like, I mean, how amazing and absolutely incredible is the fact that WordnSound,
It hasn't sunk in yet.
you know, is going to be
The work is sinking.
in partnership with Brave New Voices in the world, but they will be responsible for Brave New Voices in Africa. I mean, I had the privilege of attending the Secret Slam to launch Brave New Voices, and nobody knew what was going to happen until we were there, and then we're like, oh crap, it's Brave New Voices Africa. And I mean, guys, like, tell us about, I guess, about this partnership with Brave New Voices and what that means for WordnSound and for poetry in Africa. But also, what are some of the projects that WordnSound has worked on internationally what are some of the projects
that have been like highlights, you know, and also I think a very interesting thing is how we always see the highlights, you know, how people see the work that's done. So we see WordnSound is amazing, it's brilliant, you're hosting Brave New Voices Africa, but people don't have an idea of the work that goes behind it, right? And I think it's such an our generation thing where you want all the beautiful things, but without the hard work that accompanies it, right? Because you're in the social media I don't know, generation where no one is posting their sad days on
Yes,
Instagram. Let's be
it's
honest.
just the glam days.
It's
Yeah.
the highlights, you know. So with that being said, and in the similar vein, what have been some of the that one low lights that you think propelled you guys in a different direction that you would not have taken outside of that?
Ooh. One, I think in the last 2 to 3 years, we've been repositioning WordnSound to be an international player. I think for us, once we sort of saw that in South Africa, you know, through digital, we quickly conquered that space. But the real opportunities and growth for the poets that we work with is actually outside of the continent. It's interacting with the European and North American and South American counterparts and so forth, you know. So we then said, well, how do we engage more with outside countries? So I used to work for the British Council as the arts projects manager. So that gave me an insight into how the EU is structured, how they fund projects and so forth. And this was prior to Brexit, you know. So with that knowledge, when I left British Council, I was like, okay, cool. There's the Erasmus Fund Plus that Europe has now put out, which encourages mobility between Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa. How do we position ourselves? And because we had such a massive digital presence, other European organizations who are needing to find African partners, when they Google spoken word Africa, the first company that pops up is WordnSound. So we've been getting these opportunities from that. So we started engaging. I mean, we've done, the first project was called DESA. We partnered with a German organization called No Boundaries. And we did Johannesburg and Berlin, musicians, poets, just different art forms merging. And then we did Next Generation Speaks, which includes 5 countries, South Africa, Belgium, Netherlands, the UK, and the US. And then this is where the Brave New Voices partnership also came out of. There's another one we just wrapped up now called Skills for Managing the Arts. And we did that in partnership with Bulgaria, Hungary, Kenya, Botswana, and obviously ourselves. And that one is more about sharing methodology. How are you guys managing arts in your country? What are the new skills? How do young people connect? You know, so from the NGS project, that's how Brave New Voices came out. We went to San Francisco last year to go see how they do Brave New Voices. Sat through a whole week of workshops, understanding how they work, their methodology, how they interact with young people in classrooms, in communities. And they're like, look, we've been trying to expand into the continent and you guys look like you know what you're doing. Do you think this is a challenge that you guys could take on? And we went, oh shit, no, yeah.
Hell yes.
This can be done, you know.
Don't know how, but
we don't know,
it can be done.
But provided that also we are given time to sort of introduce or launch the project in small steps. So we're going to be doing it over the next 3 years. First year being sending a team to Brave New Voices this year, which is what the Secret Slam was about. So they are a non-competitive team. They're going to observe, learn, because they're going to become mentors for next year. Because Brave New Voices is primarily aimed at high school students. So that's where we're going to be going this year, starting with that. 2018, we have the first South African finals with high school students. Then we send a team to Brave New Voices to go compete. We bring down the African partners to come see how we do it. 2019, we launched the full-on Brave New Voices across the continent. And hopefully
starting
send
with 5 African countries.
Well, starting with 5, yes.
Okay.
Let's scale down.
All of Africa, yo. All
I'm
of
like,
Africa.
yes,
Look,
I'm ready to
that's-
take.
And also, I mean, it's right now it's open to anybody who wants to participate. I think 5 we are being sort of modest and realistic until starting off, but it's spoken word is catching fire across the globe. You know, as a voice for young people, as a way of expressing ourselves. So it's open. You know what I mean? We could have a Brave New Voices Africa finals where it's 15 countries, 20 countries, and then filter down to maybe 4 or 5 that we send to the Brave New Voices finals. But yeah, in terms of the continental interaction though, that needs to be massive.
But like, this is incredible, right?
It's amazing.
Because I think for me, it's for once we're getting a poetry company, live company, that is going to show Black excellence, right? Because we need to talk about this, and we need to talk about the fact that WordnSound is fully Black owned.
Yeah.
Celebrating Melanin Magic on stage. So we need to talk about that. We need to talk about that this is a space where we can show that, you know, we are just more. We are more than that.
And has been a platform for so many brilliant young Black poets. I mean, it would be remiss if we don't mention the fact that Qhakaza Mthembo, that we met through WordnSound. now has a book, and in the foreword in her book, she writes a thank you to Word and
Word and
Sound.
Sound,
And she
yeah.
Oh,
says,
is it?
I didn't even know that. Oh my god, that was so great.
oh my gosh, really guys, really?
Oh my goodness.
She does
Okay.
actually.
She does, and when I saw that, and when I saw that, because we were talking about having how we're gonna have you guys on the show, and we're so excited. I saw that, and I was like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, it's exactly, and it's that being at the forefront. So this is because this is also what Black excellence means. It means that you open the door for people who look like you to not have to endure the same struggles that you did, right? So with Word and Sound having been in place, the next generation of poets will not have to go through the same struggles.
I think that's a tangent you were talking about earlier. You know, to be like at some stage you make a conscious decision and you say this is public service. If we never monetize the Word and Sound concept, the way as a platform for Black young kids to get excited about literature, to get into literature, to build a trajectory, if we never monetize that, that's fine. But if it keeps doing what it's meant to do, which is become this door, this platform, this bouncing step for Black excellence, for young people to get into writing and so forth, then the work's done. Then we must then look further than that and start building a value chain around that, you know, which is something also we've started doing, where like, who's recording them? There's no poetry record label.
This and you finally got poetry albums,
You
and I
see what
think
I
it's
mean?
important, right?
amazing.
Finally, we can listen to poetry, and not just go to Word and Sound to
Right,
watch
right,
it.
yeah.
Finally, you can get Afura's album on iTunes. You can
Google
also
Play.
get it on Google Play. We'll talk about his album just in a bit, but I think also that's the thing, right? The fact that now. There are poetry, I can listen to it. I don't only
buy
need to
it,
go
yeah.
on YouTube, but I can buy it and I can actually listen to the poetry.
And it's crazy that we've been sleeping on that, right? Because I mean, for the longest time, I didn't realize there was a Grammy. There's an actual Grammy
For spoken word.
spoken word.
So we're gonna start sending some stuff.
You
Just be
know?
like, right.
Right? And like he's saying that it is the idea that you create legacies, and I think that's what Word and Sound is doing, right? And I think the beautiful thing about the creation of legacies is that at the time you don't realize what you're creating, right? And it's a little bit sad because sometimes it's even posthumous that people look back and they're like, you know, that was the start of something big, you know.
Qhakaza Mthembo. I mean, we knew of Qhakaza Mthembo when I was still at British Council. We are still Joburg based. The interactions we're doing with Cape Town are funded by British Council when British poets come down. So we're dealing with in Zinc, Adrian and Peter there. And, you know, there's a girl, Qhakaza Mthembo, I keep hearing about her. Then we launched the first South African National Slam. And we asked them for a list of their top 4, I think. And she's on the list, you know, and even then she's on the list as the underdog. There are other people that,
But what did she do, guys?
No,
What did she do?
She won
What did she
the
do?
first national slam, and from there she ran with it.
Oh my
She
goodness.
literally, from that first slam in Grahamstown, she ran with it, and look at where she is now. You know what I mean?
We just need a foot.
You
in
just
the
need a
door.
foot in, and if you've got the passion, the drive, the talent, and the commitment, you run with it, you know. And for us, that's the important part. Like, how do we open that door, give you the platform, and you run with it? You know?
What do you wish you could tell? Because you guys work a lot with young artists, right? And young poets. And I mean, in the poem, the 21 Gun Series, you talk about how you need to read a little bit more. Your tweet is not a poem. What do you wish you could tell young poets and young artists?
Like, instant gratification is the worst thing in the world, especially as an artist. My writing career hasn't started. My writing career is gonna start 5 years from now when I'm 40. Everything else I've written, I'm doing now, that is warming up. That is groundwork. You know, that is me building a base to be able to launch my writing and my artistry from. You know, there's this Twitter, YouTube, MTV base sort of mentality of I'm talented, so it means I must blow up now. I must be on TV, I must be on radio, I must be touring, I must make $1 million, I must, you know what I mean? But where you're an artist, if you want your art to live forever, if you really want your art to be timeless and touch people, you actually have to create art. It can't be a hype. You know what I mean? There's a difference between a hype and art. You know, hype is done in 2 months, 3 months. That's it. We're tired of it. Art is something we can revisit years later and listen to it and find relevance and reinterpret it. You know, so can we go back to creating art? You will be okay. It's fine. Create art, because the minute you start creating a trajectory, you know, fine, you'll still do the life balancing. You have to do commission work to pay your bills and so forth. But if your departure point is I'm about creating art, then you're gonna carry that substance throughout your work. You know, you're not gonna lose yourself. And then when you are older, then you'll be relaxed, you've done all the hard work, and then you'll start enjoying the benefits of being an artist. You'll be touring, you'll be lecturing, you'd be special guesting here and there and whatnot. You'll be publishing books and releasing art, creating art at your own leisure, at your own terms, you know what I mean? But first you have to put in the hard work of owning your space, you know. And for me, as an artist right now, everything that I've put in 10 years. My album is out under my own record label. You see what I mean? I had to wait 10 years to do that.
Yeah.
I'm about to put out my first chapbook, and it's going to be about from my own publishing company. You know, I could have done that 10 years ago and hung myself with Macmillan and whoever, and where would I be now? You know, because I know those stories of my peers who signed with those labels, and they saw my 700 rand royalties from their books. They saw 1,000 rand royalties from their books. Some of them even never saw anything, but their names were out there and so forth. You know, so for me, it was an alternative game. I want to own everything. This is my IP. This is my intellectual property. If it takes me a long time to create the platform for me to be able to own that, I will do that. Then my kids will eat forever. You know what I mean?
It's interesting you say that, because yesterday Aja Monet, she's an American poet. She does amazing things. She wrote, "I've been writing and sharing poems since I was 15. I'm 29 now. I'm only beginning to gain more support for my work. It doesn't happen overnight."
Yep.
So it's interesting that you say that, because even people who are big now have said, like, well, instant gratification is not a thing. Nobody's going to wake up tomorrow.
I think
and see
last year was the year of like appreciating the work that people put in. So many people blew up that had been a work in progress for a long time.
Yeah.
Solange has a quote where she talks about how it took her 8 years to blow up, you know, and like a large part of it is the social media instant gratification.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
we're so obsessed with that. Like right now, everyone
now,
must
yeah.
know that, you know, that I've made it, because you want to be bumping like, yeah, mama, I made it. I mean, you will make it, but
It's
it
gonna
takes
take a lot of work,
time.
yeah.
Where's the body of work?
I think also we have like it's like the age of a new kind of artist, and I think that's also what we've been doing as WordnSound. So one thing when we started with WordnSound, we're like, we don't want to be an NGO, because when you work with arts, when you work with youth development, you have to be an NGO. But that's that charity mentality. That's that we rely on handouts mentality. Whereas we came into the space and we said, we are surrounded by so much talent. Why is this talent not enough to sustain a living? Why can't you make a living being an artist with so much talent? Why do audiences keep filling venues and coming out of there lighter and feeling so much better about themselves? You've done so much work to uplift the community around you, but you still go home starving. Like, it makes no sense, you know? So I think that the one thing that we've really been pushing is the business of art, you know? So I think that's another thing that's really important for artists. It's nice to just be an artist who just focuses on the art and the craft, and you're so into this, but then that means that you are giving up certain power that you have. If you understand each and every part of the process, from like the idea to like the marketing and all of that stuff, you don't necessarily need to do it yourself, but if you understand it, it's really important. So I think we're at a point where artists need to take control of the business around their craft a lot more, and understand that. Also, I think that we're at a phase, or at a point in life, where art is also just about like global niches, right? So that digital platform that you have, your social media, it shouldn't be about the instant gratification, but it should be about you building the brand, building those networks, and being able to play that game, because that's essentially what it is. Thabiso's off to Rotterdam Festival in Italy, you know, but because you've got a strong digital base, whoever is the curator of that festival sitting in Italy can search at Afurakan, look at the stuff that you've got, see your Behance profile, see your YouTube, see all of this stuff. So all of that is really important, because we are now playing in a global space, you know, and we've seen it. We've seen how literally people are sitting in Germany saying, I've got a project, I need an African partner, let us search African poetry. And because WordnSound comes up, we get a call and we're part of that project. As simple as that, you know. So I think that it's really important for you to understand that it goes beyond the arts, and I guess it's a bit more of a burden than artists had before, you know, because artists before, it could just be about the music and that's what it's about, but now it's like, it's a new kind of artist. It's an artist who can walk into a meeting and have this production talk, understand your technical requirements and all of that stuff, leave that meeting, walk back into the space when the performance happens, and now you walk on stage as the performer, you know. So you need to have all of that stuff, you know. It's important to know it, but I think it's also essential to know that you don't necessarily need to do each and every part of that. So find people who are around who are really great with social media. You understand what you want from that person, but they understand how to make it happen. But it's important for you to understand each and every aspect of your craft, from the actual art itself, but then everything else that surrounds it.
And I mean, like, for me personally, I'm grateful for WordnSound because some of my favorite poets I've seen on the WordnSound stage, right? So, for instance, you've got Qhakaza Jonas, who I think people have been sleeping on for a long
Still
time.
sleeping.
Right,
Like,
sleeping on.
can people get woke?
One, she's gone to Passion for Christ Movement Rhetoric 2016, which was incredible, right? And recently she was in Florida just to teach poetry and spoken word. A South African woman, a black South African woman doing that.
Things.
And she's now got another poetry. If you want to learn poetry, there's a workshop that she's doing, right? So, like, also, what are some of the other things that WordnSound does apart from spoken word, like just festivals and stuff like that? Do you have like workshops that you run? Like, what are some of the most strategic things that you speak about in the business of art that WordnSound does?
So those workshops on the business of art is stuff that we've been doing. I mean, I think I bumped into a poster from like 2011, 2012, where we were giving those workshops on the business of art. So that's been something that we've been doing, the art entrepreneurship, just getting other poetry organizations to also just understand. We do quite a lot of I'm going to call it some very loose mentorship, you know, with other poetry organizations. So whether it's a signature poetry in Qhakaza that can call us up and be like, struggling with this, you know, can you assist with this? Or we're looking to do this. So just being able to create that community and be able to talk, you know. In terms of the education aspect, right? So we've been doing a lot of work at sort of just trying to understand alternative education or popular education, right? So we know South Africa at the grips. I mean, it's gone a bit quiet now, you know, the fees must fall movement, but we're at the grips of an education crisis. People cannot afford the price of education, but people still need to be educated. You know, those skills still need to be there, and particularly within the creative sector, which can really be an answer to a lot of youth unemployment, you know, something that we could really all just like strive from. So it's really been about how do we create, you know, I mean, right now it's called a WordnSound Academy, but what does that look like? How do we tap into the expertise around us to be offering these skills, you know? So we've got Raphael Dabdon, who is a university lecturer, you know. How do we say, okay, cool, so if you had 11 weeks or however many weeks, what kind of curriculum would you put together and be able to teach, right? And to be able to offer that at a far less fee than what universities would offer you to be able to go and do your masters in English or whatnot. So I think it's also just about re-understanding or sort of like reconstructing what we think of education and how you get education and which education is valuable, whose voices are valuable, whose knowledge is valuable for you to pass on, you know. Another thing that's been really major with what we do is digital skills training. So earlier this year we were in Free State and we were in Mpumalanga, and it was basically about looking at the poet as an entrepreneur. So how do we do the writing and the performance workshops on day one, but then day two we then look at the admin, the finance, the digital, all of that stuff with artists to then say, this is how you write an invoice, you know, this is how or this is what a contract should look like. This is what you can demand as a performer, you know, as an artist, you know. So I think that that's just been around that. But then Thabiso spoke also about sort of like the value chain, what else we do. So there's WordnSound that was founded by Thabiso and I, but we've got a team that runs it. But then Thabiso and I, then being able to sit where we are, have then been able to start other companies. So we've also then got Beats. Okay, so we'll start with Black House, right? So we've got Black House Soft Serve. So a lot of people would come to WordnSound saying, oh, could you run a digital campaign for me, or can you help me with the digital? Whereas WordnSound, it's a production company, right? So we do production, and whatever show you want to put on, we can definitely do that. But because I also then do digital for WordnSound, those demands were growing, and we just couldn't keep up with them as a production company. So we then set up Black House Soft Serve, which is a digital marketing agency, and that's where we do a lot of the digital work that we do. So WordnSound is one of our clients. We've had the Sanaa Africa Festival. We've had British Council as one of our clients as well. We then looked at there's a lot of people who will send us emails. Oh, I want to book Thabiso for this, or I'm looking for a slam poet to do a 3-minute video or whatnot, you know. So that was a lot of like the booking and the agencies, you know. So we then formalized that, and we've got Poetic Act, which is a poetry booking agency, you know, with all the names that we have worked with, some very credible names in South African poetry space, from some very established names to those who are also like emerging and coming out now. But that was just like a centralized space for us to be able to say, if you want a credible poet, because we've seen all the ads. I mean, poetry is a cool thing now, so all of these adverts are using poetry. It would be really great if they actually used a poet. They could actually like be able to get what it is that they'd wanted to do, you know. There's also Beats from the East, which is a recording label, so that's where Thabiso's first and second album recorded through. So it really was just about, let's take a step back and let's look at what the industry needs, instead of someone saying, oh look, there's a lovely spoken word industry that's growing. How's about we buy out sort of like the publishing companies, because they're going to need to publish books, so they need to come to us. How's about we create recording studios, so they've got to come to us. So it's about, can we own every element of our craft? You know, I mean, there's bigger ideas about going into property. Can we set up a building where you as an artist can live in that building? You can also have access to rehearsal rooms and recording studios. And this building, I mean, we know that artists can be inspired. Katra was saying, can there be a safe recording space that is available for me at 3 a.m? Maybe that's when I do my work, you know. So can we have a building that's self-sustaining? So it's got a bookshop at the bottom, so that if you are an author, your book can be published in the space, you know, printed in the space and then sold in the space. You can also launch your book there. If you are a musician, you can have your rehearsals in the space, you can have your gigs in the space as well, you know. So just about thinking about the artist and their life in totality, and how do we come into there, you know. Another big thing that we're doing now is going into schools and the schools workshops, because we don't want you to only step out of varsity and only then you meet up with WordnSound, you know. But I want to catch you at grade 1, you know. And I mean, with that one, I mean, so looking at speaking to Mzansi Spelling Bee, right? How do we get involved with the spelling bee, get young people to learn how to spell, because that's like at the basis of everything, you know. Get young people interested in reading and writing. Once they get into high school, we then get them into then the poetry program, the school slams that we have. Once you're in varsity, you're then able to participate in the poetry league that we have. Once you've graduated from varsity, you're now showcasing at different festivals, you know. So it's about understanding the trajectory of your career as an artist, that it starts at grade 1. How do we get you excited from there? But then how do we make sure that everything that you interact with, you know, the coffee shops that you go to, the bookstores that you go to, can we be owning? And by we, I'm talking about artists. Can artists own these industries that still make money off of us, you know? Because we don't want to be like the musicians where you die paupers, even though we're jamming to your songs right now. You know, why are you still dying poor? And that's because you don't own. The only thing that you own is the idea, and you've actually sold that idea. You've put it down. You've recorded it. You've sold it to someone else. So someone else is making money from what you're doing. The gigs, the places that you're performing at. You don't own the bar. You don't own the venue. You don't own the sound. All of that stuff is going out. You know, it's going out to other people. You know, and we know it's mostly white people as well. So can we, as Black creatives, own a lot more of what we do? Can we be hiring from each other? So even with sound, a simple thing like that, we've started buying and acquiring our own sound. So right now, an artist could come to us and say they want to do a poetry show, whoever, and there we've got sound, we've got everything. It's not just that issue of the venue. So if anyone's got a building,
hey,
hit us up.
When we get the land, we will
Hey,
consider
you see how this land issue is everywhere, man.
But what do you guys hope for WordnSound? Like, what do you hope that WordnSound will be when it becomes this? I mean, it's growing, you know. So when it becomes what it's like a child. So when it becomes what it's meant to grow up to be, who do you want WordnSound to grow up to be?
Wow, that's such a beautiful question.
I think it's a fight.
I think you should answer it.
With our shareholders. I think for me, WordnSound exists in sort of various levels. WordnSound, the inspiration platform, the entry level into literature, that needs to remain forever. We don't have a 20-year-old literary platform that is Black owned in this country. So that's the first step. So we're at 7, we get into 10, but we want to make that 20 years at least, right? We don't have a 20-year-old open mic in this country where you can say, right, we are legendary, you know, where we are 20 years later, we are sitting with all of these great poets, great authors who are celebrated around the world, and all of them can point and say, you know what, at some stage in my life, I started at this corner, you know. So for me, it's about keeping that platform accessible. And we have fights with our shareholders. They want to raise, for example, for the slams, they want to raise the ticket prices from 50 Rand to, it's like, oh, other shows are charging 100, we can also move to 80. And I'm like, no, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is that we're not trying to make money. We're trying to keep this accessible. So at the bottom end is about WordnSound at least achieving that. You see what I mean? so that our kids don't start over. They can grow up in a literary culture, and they can grow up being surrounded by future stars, you know what I mean? There's nothing more amazing. And you know, when you've got an industry when somebody who is hot now, who is relevant, who is, major talented now, tells you, where I grew up, I was a Pikinini and I was running around between a Mekmanaka and a Lesotho Rampolo gang and whatever. You know what I mean? Like, to have young people or musicians or artists who say that I am this because I grew up in an artistic space and I got to watch other legends be themselves, and that's how I was nurtured, that's how I was cultured. We don't have that, you know. A lot of the time, the magical black artists get taken out and they get adopted by these white record labels or these white philanthropy projects, and you end up becoming this unicorn, you know. But we don't have these black owned spaces where there has been generations of excellence coming out of it, and you can map, you know, that entire trajectory. So for us, it's starting there as well. If we can get, I think for me, the luckiest artist in this day and age is a literary artist, because primarily we read. Our art forces us to read. If you want to become something in this art, you have to read. And by virtue of reading, expose yourself to information. You know, right now, a lot of the other disciplines, people still don't read. It's still about instant gratification. So they will not own their own industry. They will not own their own art, their own IP by the end of their lives, you know. And these are our peers. It breaks my heart, you know. They are charging 100,000 rand for a performance, but 10 years from now we're going to be collecting money to bury them. You see what I mean? So with us as literary artists, we have the opportunity then to literally own this thing, to flip the game on everybody, from a Macmillan to whoever the majors are. For the first time, we sit in a position where we can flip the game on them. We are the biggest consumer market. The notion of that we don't buy is out the window. If you look at South Africa alone, in the last 22 years, how many young black people have professionalized, moved into middle class, have got disposable income? Either I'm spending it on a bottle of Glenfiddich or I'm spending it on books. You see, like what you were saying, we need to redirect that capital. I think what you were saying, Alma, that we need to redirect that additional capital that we have, that disposable capital, you know. So how do we get the artist to be that entrepreneur, to be that businessman, to be able to own, create products and sell them, make a living, be able to invest, expand? There's a lot of normalizing that needs to happen for the artist. If you look at the economic sector alone, you know, we don't have bonds, we don't have insurance, we don't have medical aid, we don't have all the stuff. Why? Because people say we don't have money. I probably make more money offhand than a professional working in an industry and earning a salary per se, you know. So how do you then start professionalizing and regulating the artists? But there needs to be incentives for the artists. We can't be paying 25% freelance tax, so the government needs to step up. SARS needs to step up to say, right, there's 5 million artists in South Africa who generate $1 billion a year. We can't bank that. Why? Because all of us refuse to pay 25% tax. You know, so how do we then create conditions for them to be able to pay tax, to feed to the economy, and for them to have security, you know? So how can WordnSound start creating a new thinking around the literary artist, so that this whole thing is sustainable?
I also like how, I mean, we've seen in the last 5 years, and I think especially moving into a theater, that's like changed performance poetry, you know. So you can get a Ziwande Bengo who's going to tell you that, yeah, Qhakaza, for my performance, I'm going to bring 30 people. I need an open flame. I need a smoke machine. I need all of this stuff. And you're just like, whoa, is this still poetry that we're performing, you know? So I think for us to be that space where you know that anything goes. I mean, I feel like, I mean, we've got our monthly shows, but I'll never tell you what's going to happen at the next show. Like, it can be anything, you know. And I think that that's also the magic of WordnSound, is that once you give artists a space to go wild, I mean, you've got an entire theater. The theater allows you to do certain things. And I think also with having more artists who are trained in the dramatic arts, they're bringing that element into it, you know. So whether you've got Mbudisi Sekgotse, who actually knows that he's got a space where he can try and fuse, you know, illustrations with music, with poetry, with, you know, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm loving that, you know, and just seeing what's happened. Let's even like look at just like the last 3 years even, where you're just like, geez, I mean, just because there is a space that exists, the art then responds to that space, and you keep creating with what you have, you know. So I think space becomes really important, you know, the space to create, the space to absolutely go wild, and know that there is one place where we have never told an artist what they can and can't do. We get to a show, and there'll be things that artists say that even I'm just like,
we just read the Constitution,
oh,
like 16.1, freedom of expression, right? Rights, obligations. Anything outside of that, go nuts.
Yeah, man. Creating that space, and for Word and Sound to be known as that space where, you know, they really push the boundaries of art. They really allowed art to just like exist in whatever form it decided to take on, you know?
Speaking of literary artists on the come up, who are some artists that are on the come up that you think people should be looking out for? So we've established that people are sleeping on Sipogazi. I don't know why, but stay woke.
Hard. So hard.
Modise Sokote.
His EP is out.
Oh
Everybody
my-
EP is on SoundCloud, yo, SoundCloud.
do the things.
This is going to be a
Absolutely
shameless
sleepy
plug.
remedies.
You need to go and listen to that album. It has literally, when I start my day, you see, so I get to work and things are tough, right? And then that one person starts talking in my ear and they start wang, wang, wang. And I'm just like, wait. All I need in my life is dipoko, just haiwanyana. And I'm just like, cool, my soul is ready to continue with this day. So I think definitely Modise Sokote is one of them. We've got Kollega Putuma, although I think people maybe not so sleeping. I think that definitely she's waking us
People
up.
are starting to wake up. Like, Kollega has not even started doing what Kollega is capable of doing.
I mean, after
This is
TEDx
warm up.
and that water poem,
Bruh.
that is required reading.
This is what Sipogazi Jonas, you were saying?
Yes.
Like, people are still actually, we're in slumberland on Sipogazi Jonas. Like, Sipogazi Jonas is going to come out, ne? And they're going to go, ne? Like,
And this could have been you. Let it be known. Let the record states that on this day, Word and Sound times Cheeky Natives allowed you to possibly be great ahead of your time.
Right.
I told you
To
about
be like,
Sipogazi,
Jonas, you know,
but you were playing.
get that now.
I think another interesting thing that we're seeing is artists who are going into other fields but writing, you know. So right now there's 3 amazing poets who are doing amazing work for advertising agencies. That's Qhakaza Mthembo, who goes as Elysium Garcia on stage. There's Melanie, who used to at some point be Cornelius' shows, although I don't think he is anymore. And there's Bonganziweni, who's the host of our shows. You know, I think what that is showing is that our agencies are just like, I can't teach you how to be a brilliant writer. I can teach you format. I can teach you that an ad is a 60-second, it needs this and this, but that flair, that thing, man,
That thing.
you know, that
That's
thing.
why, and Triple A or
You need
Vega
to be,
can't
you know,
teach you
they
that
can't.
thing.
So I think that's also amazing to see
can't.
artists doing that. Thabiso Afurakan
That's another. Thabiso Afurakan.
Ooh.
That's another black boy who is coming out.
Black Boy
Thabiso
Magic.
Pagamam, is it Pagamam Loco?
Logos,
Yes.
Pagamam Loco, guys, like that girl, ne? That girl needs to, where she is, she's fine, you know, she's fine, but she needs to be pulled out of that space and put into spaces that will just allow her to shine. I think that is the only thing that is missing right now is just her being put into spaces. But as a writer,
brilliant.
she is amazing. Like as a storyteller, and also just the perspective she comes from. You know, I think for me, what excites me about Pagama is that like for the first time, I feel like we've got a Grace Jones within literature, you know, like the brilliance, the craziness, the flair, the humanity, the sexy, the everything, the entire package where like she is not afraid of anything. She just needs to be given the space, you know. Who else? Ziwande Bengu. I think
Oh my gosh.
I think that's another guy that he's going to like create a lot of upsetting art that's gonna shift a lot of position.
I love how you also call it art. So like I think with Ziwande is that he goes beyond poetry. It's now just like you become immersed in this performance, right? It's difficult to say that it's poetry. It's difficult to say it's a theatre piece. It's everything, and then it is hard hitting. Like whether he's telling you a story of Lily Blue, whether it's the story of the Fees Must Fall, like he is so encapsulating. Like he has that. You know, that thing, man. Ish.
Future, Zizu Bam.
Oh.
Look out for a lady called Zizu Bam. She might not be relevant to your life right now, right? But 2 years from now, Zizi Bam. That's all I'm saying.
And I think, with that monthly show, we get to see people who are like fresh, you know. So the names that we've mentioned right now, they've put in the work. They're like at sort of like the next level, right? But you've got a Zizi Popam who's 19, 20 or so, who's really like just starting out. There's Gitu, you know, there's Corey Strange. Who's like a master when it comes to wordplay.
And he's not even like, you don't even know about him. You don't even know.
That's the thing. We've got Shileshe, you know.
Tobani.
Tobani,
guys. So I think it's so difficult for someone to be like, who do you need to listen to? Everyone. Just come
to Word and Sound events. Okay, we're putting you on. Come to Word and Sound events.
Done.
And you'll thank us later.
But I think for me that is the ultimately, if there ever was a reward or prize for doing all of this work, it would be this. to be able to watch brilliance when it is still raw, when it's still untainted, when it's still fearless, when it is still vulnerable and it's still figuring itself out, you know, building its own confidence, because that's when a lot of the brilliance comes out. That's a lot of the writing. Then later we format, because, you know, we have to make bread and butter, we have to find ourselves a line and so forth. But at that age, 18, 19, that's when the rawness is still there, the passion for being heard, you know. And I think for me, I can't buy that. I cannot buy 7 years of watching people who are... How do you buy watching a Kollega Putuma in Grahamstown 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And then project or imagine where she would be 5 years later. You know what I mean? So I think being given that privilege to sit at the helm of that, I think for me that's the greatest reward ever. As a writer, that is magic.
But I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about the work that you've done, Afura. Like, you know, I still go back to that Orbit session, right? Because I think it was raw, as you speak. It was such a raw, intimate space where, like, you know, you had a black man speaking to black men about all range of issues. And, you know, right now you have an album out and you have another album coming out. So do you want to tell us about, like, what your album is? And maybe we can get you to perform Nyana here for us, but we'll see how it's going.
Yeah, this Kurune is delicious. So, I've been struggling to record. A lot of my work is not formalized. I've done bits and pieces here and there, like with Leon Erasmus, published in a couple of anthologies, but I just didn't have time to sit down and put my own work together and formalize it. So we then set up a recording studio last year with a guy called Cyrus Beats. He's a producer, crazy guy. We recorded a dub tape. So we want to experiment with dub because, one, we feel that dub is the new rebel sound. So hip hop has like pretty much exhausted everything hip hop can do. Hip hop is no longer the rebel sound. Hip hop is the fully commercialized sound. Hip hop is starting to say things that are counter-revolutionary. You see what I mean? So for us, dub is going back to ska, to roots, to reggae, to the basics. And the minute you put voice and words over dub, you know, then you start reconscientizing people. You know that. The rhythm, the tempo, you know, and then the words. So for us, it was about how do we reclaim that sound. Reggae is international; it's all over the world. There's dance hall. There's other versions of reggae, but its African origins can be ignored. So for us right now, there isn't a big dub movement coming out of the continent. Lucky Dube was literally the last biggest reggae artist we had come out of the continent. So for us, it was about, let's create something we've never heard before. So that was the mission. We created an album called Words Over Dub. We set up a dub system, music system called Al-Kebilan Dub System. So if you know the history of music systems, it's when you put up a big ass PA system in the middle of the hood and you play reggae and you play dub and then you move it around. Big Jamaican culture straight up into the UK, Bristol. We don't have that in South Africa. It's very small. So we started with that, and then we created an album called Words Over Dub for that. I'm going to be going to Rotterdam in Spain in August. It's the second biggest reggae festival in the world.
Wow.
Slay us.
Yeah. Slay us, we are your dragons.
You know.
Fry us, we are your eggs.
So I'm going to be performing there on the secondary stage, but the primary thing is for us to network and build connections, and then we've then been secured main stage next year. So then we get to take the entire Kebilan dub system. We'll see what kind of ensemble we put together. So that album is out. It's on Google Play, it's on iTunes, Spotify, and all of that. Just search Words Over Dub. The second album is called Broken Men, and for me that's more a personal tape, looking at my work I'm writing around black men. It's also coming off a chapbook I'm putting together called the Broken Men Chapbook. I'm hoping to put together a collection called Sins of Our Fathers as sort of
As part
of it, and me putting this whole thing to rest, you know, at least for now. But so we took poems from the Broken Man chapbook and then we recorded them over hip hop beats. Again, you know, to move.
So we're gonna get some trap music.
No. We're going back to boom bap, 808 beats,
Oh,
like proper
yes,
hip hop.
yes.
You know, and I think again it was about the album itself. The Broken Man tape is a rebellion against the current noise that is male driven in hip hop, that is misogynistic, that is just full of bullshit, that is degrading women every day, that is projecting this false idea of what being a man is, that to be a man you must stand on 2 Bentleys and wear a gold chain, you know, and that is
In your coupe.
you know, and you're a successful black man.
Yeah,
And those are the
yeah.
messages we're sending down to 16-year-olds. But then we forget that primarily hip hop was about educating. Hip hop was about reflecting what is happening socially, you know. So for me, this album is about dealing with the black man, but at that level, to say, you know what, we need a different conversation. And if we need to put that conversation over hip hop beats, let's do that, you know. And that's the challenge again, is that it could be trap. What are you saying on those beats? You know what I mean? Because ultimately, that is the programming that happens with young people. Those are the lessons that young people learn. So that album is coming out in June. It's called The Broken Man Tape. I want to launch the Broken Man chapbook hopefully in August when I'm in Spain. After Spain, I'm going to go to Italy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Those 2 countries. Hopefully, I can launch it there as well. But those are the 3 projects that I'm planning to put out this year. So Words Over Dub, that's out. Broken Man Tape, that's coming out in June, and then the Broken Man chapbook hopefully by August. It's going to come out.
So, I mean, this is primarily a podcast where we were focused on all things literary. And I think it would be amiss if we didn't ask you guys about some of your favorite authors. So basically the question is twofold. If you were to advise a 16-year-old, I mean, you've spoken a lot about like young people and how passionately you feel about young people. What 3 books would you tell a 16-year-old in South Africa at this present moment that they have to read? And if there was an author, right, who could pay you like the greatest homage, if there was an author who said they admired your work and that would be like the greatest compliments of your life, like nobody could compliment you post that, which author would it be and why?
Jeez. Okay, cool. Let's start with the books, right? For me, I think reading Winnie Mandela's A Life has been something that has really like shifted me definitely, and that's like in the last 2 years. Just being able to understand our history a lot better and to understand the role of like black women, and particularly told, I mean, through her story, right? Can you jump in with one?
No pressure.
Credo Mutwa, Indaba My Children.
Okay.
I think that is a fundamental departure point for any African. It will help you debunk what is considered myths, philosophy, and actual history. Because even in the craziness of that book, you get lost up in that. But I think Credo Mutwa does that deliberately, because a lot of what is our knowledge has been written into history as mythology, as voodoo, as black magic, as, you know. So we were never about the impossible. But at the same time, they sell us Bokondolfu and freaking, what's his name, Harry Potter. But and they tell you which African witches is just mythology. So I think for me, Indaba My Children, that is a very, very fundamental departure point.
I remember reading Sula by Toni Morrison.
Sula.
And then going back to reread it.
I haven't had, Sula, sorry to interrupt, but Sula is such a powerful book. I remember reading Sula as a student. I think I was like in 5th year. And then having to go to like the wards or something, having read that book and just needing to gather myself. Toni Morrison is...
Yeah, Toni Morrison. Actually, let's
Toni...
just pull out something, like even right now.
If you love a black woman in your life, give her a Toni Morrison book.
Yeah. Yep.
I think for me, I don't think I'm intellectually capable to appreciate the work of Toni Morrison. I mean, I've read her books, but I feel like later on in my life I'm going to go back.
Smarter.
Yeah, and I'm going to be like, yes!
Yeah.
Because like that's the type of person who Toni is, right? So we definitely agree with you that Toni Morrison, whatever.
Have you got your next book?
Classics. I write what I like. I think for me, as a black radical, that's a amazing departure point. One thing I've just come across now, which I don't think is widely publicized, is the articles and essays by Robert Sobukwe. Somebody emailed me those, and I'm starting to get into them, so I'm looking forward to that. But I think for me, Robert Sobukwe is somebody who's sort of pre-black consciousness. He is like the father of, all right, let shit go ape shit. All right, let's be radical in our thinking. And if the most dangerous thing we have is our brains. You see what I mean? Before Biko could articulate it, I feel like Robert Sobukwe was already living it, and there's so much that attests to that.
And I think going back to poetry, just like very, very selfishly, like my story, Lebo Mashile's Rhythm of Rhythm.
Yes!
And then, so back then, but then even now, Flying Above the Sky, for me, ooh, you know what, we'd need a whole new podcast to like speak about Lebo. And I actually do think Cheeky Natives needs to speak to an entire generation of young writers and like word lovers about our relationship with Lebo, because I think that she's really that important. But I think when it comes to poetry, when it comes to also just understanding the perspective of a black woman who's unapologetic and who will actually tell you what's what, you know.
You know, she's like, I smoked spliff with Jesus
Christ
Christ
last night, right? I mean, with Lebo, I mean, I performed that in my drama class, my matric drama class. There was a poem by hers. Guys, I got a distinction me in my drama class.
Excellent.
Go Lebo.
You know? And I think just being able to have someone to, not necessarily as an anchor, but like someone who throughout life has been there. And I mean, now our relationship with Lebo, where we're helping her and whatnot, it's so meaningful, you know. So I think, I would definitely buy my nieces a Lebo Mashile book to read, and just to be like, you know, how to black women, you know, like
and Latitude was so, guys, like I was thinking about Latitude the other day. Ooh. Latitude was so ahead of its time.
We weren't ready for it as a country.
We weren't ready as a country,
Latitude
and we couldn't
was
fully appreciate
Kaya before we had Kumbule Kaya.
I remember there's an episode of Latitude where she went to I want to say it was a Khoisan community, and I mean it was potent for me, because we always observe certain people's cultures as we it's voyeuristic. So you look at people's cultures and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Why do you do that? You know, and it's also why it's very irritating to have our stories told by people who have no idea what our culture entails. Right? Because it's always that bird's eye view, but you're hovering, you're never quite within. And she went, and guys, Lebo still, she managed to write a poem in 3 days. Like,
also just that challenge, right?
Right.
To be able to like do such site-specific work, and for the writing, I mean, a lot of those poems are in that book, that Ribbon of Rhythm, you know. So I mean, those are poems that I'm not just writing nonsense, you know, because I've got to quickly shoot this, you know, but it's like really critically engaging work that you can listen to, or that you can read today and still find meaning in it, you know. And I think that's just about, when it comes to this art of spoken word, I think that she has been a runner, and like really just about it. And I really love what she's done with her voice, you know. And I think that it's been a burden, definitely, you know. And listening to her talk about just what it takes to really be Lebo Mashile, I mean, it is difficult, you know. But I mean, she's used her voice, and she's given it to so many issues that needed it, you know. So like, whether it was like child pornography, or whether it was like black women and just like their bodies and their identity, you know. Like, I think it's really important to be able to understand what power you hold, and to then know how to use it, or to use it in a way that benefits more than just you and sort of like your immediate others, you know. I think it's a lesson that you can definitely learn from her.
And your last book, Thabiso?
Sure. I had 2 names in my head that I think need to be, or at least I'm enjoying. The second one just slipped my mind now. But the first one is Nick Mhlongo. I think Nick Mhlongo, Affluenza. I've just read Affluenza now, and I mean, I've read his other 2 books as well. The title just slipped my mind, but I remember reading him for the first time. You know, Dog Eat Dog, like way back in the day.
Dog Eat Dog.
You know, and I was sort of just intrigued by this his thinking and his brain, and then later I get to meet him and realize he's just an idiot just like me, you know. And my relationship with black male writers is very, you know, because black men, we got problems, you know. But he's writing, I think, as a storyteller, he's it's unapologetic. It's black.
My mom and I read Dog Eat Dog, and for me that's how I always know when I'm onto like a really good book, is that it can transcend. There are writers for the ages, right? There are writers like Toni Morrison is a writer for the ages, you know. Like your children's children will be reading Toni and having these conversations. And Nick wrote Dog Eat Dog, and I was reading this book. I'm like laughing in the house. Mom's like, "What's going on here?" She reads this book. She's like, "Yo, this boy, who's this boy?" You know, and it's beautiful, and this is why we need to give black literature the space that it deserves, because this is we are an excellent people in general. We do things, and we do things excellently, and all we need to do is to be given platforms, right? And then you produce a Nick, you produce a Nick in the same generation as a Mohale. I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Or you produce a Fred Kumalo preceding this, you know? And you have a Thando Molozane as the older, like, brother, you know what I'm saying?
And his case is interesting as well, because he's trying to go back to writing in fully Xhosa and making sure that work is out, you know? So you're right in the sense that we're sitting with a very interesting generation of voices and writers. I mean, even with Nick, if you read Affluenza now, there are so many themes in those short stories that deal with what is problematic now,
today,
but you can can generationally go back and say, we've been dealing with this, you know, so being able to capture us in a way that you read it and doesn't feel like a foreign story, more than anything, you know.
And a bonus book, just because, you know, I think it also just like my introduction into seeing poetry in like a very like narrative way would be Ndoza Keshange's
Yes.
For Colored Girls, right?
Yes.
Right? I mean, and I always say this to him because, you know, life comes at you sideways sometimes when you're a black woman. But when Ndoza Keshange wrote that to be black, woman and alive is a metaphysical dilemma she hasn't quite conquered yet. Who would have been able to write a black woman's story like that? Every black woman on this planet can tell you that their existence is a metaphysical dilemma. It transcends the physical. It transcends the here, right? Because you're dealing with every oppressive system that exists oppresses you. So
At all levels.
Be it misogyny, be it misogynoir, be it patriarchy, be it racism, you know, and when she said it was a metaphysical dilemma, I was like, so I'm not the only one that
you're
is
not going crazy,
right? And that's why
and to be able to define the condition, because a lot of the time people go through conditions, but because they can't define them, they can't put a word to them, then you can't get solidarity. You feel like you are all by yourself. You don't see.
Right? And that's why what Word and Sound does, bringing literature to the masses is brilliant, and it's such amazing unapologetic work. Because when James Baldwin says that, you think that your pain is unprecedented, and then you read,
and you're like, yo,
right?
you're like, wait,
and then you get a colleague Putuma to talk about your relationship with water.
and then you're like,
then you're like, so I'm not the only one that is feeling sideways about this, or you get a Qhakaza Jonas to talk about names. Right? When you're sitting there and people are saying you're every other way except you know? And that's why we had to have you guys on the show, because you're so
one last author
unapologetically.
we are sleeping on is Qhakaza Mthembo.
Yes.
I think Qhakaza Mthenbo's work has got this soft militancy in it.
Soft militancy.
Yes, because she's a former soldier, so she's found a way to bring that into her writing, and especially around queer work, queer writing. I think she just put out a second collection now, which is a continental collection.
Queer Africa.
Queer Africa, you know. So I think Qhakaza Mthembo, she brings in a wisdom that spans worlds, where she's dealt with misogyny in the deepest of situations in the army, black army, fighting for liberation, right down now to dealing with being queer in this current world and so forth. So I think her perspective is so much more important. Also, as an intersectional writer, that carries the wisdom of age, because a lot of intersectional writers right now, they're young, they're pumped up, there's a lot of current issues they're dealing with, but for her there's that wisdom of having lived through experiences and being able to through words, I don't know, like just summarize and pack and put into these little bombs as you read. I remember one of her poems, From These Hands, is a metaphor for if I was a glass and I broke in the kitchen on tiles, and all the pieces scattered everywhere. Would you look for me? Would you go behind the fridge and find that one piece? Would you go behind the cupboard? Would you gently, would you avoid, me cutting your toe? But for me, that poem was so much about demanding love and from your partner, but done in such a delicate way every day. So that's why for me it makes her this dangerous writer who, if she goes unchecked, watch.
Fire.
Watch.
Yeah, and I think, James Baldwin is one of our favorite writers, and he always says, we write to heal, and he says we write as witness. He wants us to create a language that is accessible even after we are gone, and that's what you have said Word and Sound wants to do, is that it's not perfectly for our generation, but a generation from now, people will have this foundation to, one, be who they want to be, right? Write what they want to write, and also tell the stories they want to tell. And nobody can tell them, oh, no, it's not for that audience.
Yes.
It's just be like, tell your story. There's someone in the audience who can relate to that. So I thank you, Word and Sound, for coming to join the Cheekinators and having a conversation with us about Word and Sound and about the work that you're doing. We think it's absolutely incredible. And we want to say continue, and we hope that the Cheeky Natives can somehow be involved in the work that Word and Sound is doing, because obviously we want to be plugged in the Melanin, right? We don't want to be left behind. We want to be plugged in that Melanin.
Thank you.
And more importantly, I think it's also about standing. You know, there are occasions and there are moments when you get to stand on the right side of history. And I think right now in this country, you have an opportunity to stand on the right side of history. So thank you to WordnSound for standing on the right side of history.
Yay.
We hope to join you as the cheeky natives on the right side of history. But more importantly, continue to tell our stories. Continue to leave legacies behind so that when your children's children hear and read about themselves, it's not as outsiders, it's as people who've had lived experiences. So thank you so much to WordnSound for doing the things, the damn things.
Thank you guys for having us, for engaging, for making our work sound and seem important.
Yeah, and I think just giving the opportunity to reflect on what we're doing. I think so. Like you said it earlier, is that we really get caught up in like the day-to-day stuff, and it's very difficult to look back and be like, hey, but you know what, the shit, without sounding very like egomaniacal or anything, you know. So I think just being given an opportunity to reflect, help us take stock of what we've done, and then to be able to be like, okay, cool, if this last hour that we've been here doesn't give us like motivation to keep going when it gets difficult, then nothing will. So thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, we look forward to working together, doing great shit.
Big things are gone.
Big things are going.
All right, guys, thank you. I'll check you on the next episode
Of the cheeky natives doing the cheeky things.